The second you know what you're dealing with, you should be going through the back door. Anything you do, you should be going through the back door. You should not be, there should be no consideration, there should be no reason for you to be going through the front door. Never mind risking getting pregnant and giving birth. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another YouTube video. And on today's video, I want to talk about a movie that I've put off watching for a very long time. And that movie is A Quiet Place. Now, as I said in the last video I did, which was about Midsummer, if you haven't seen that video, I'm going to put the video up either here or here, one or the other, but you should go watch the video. But as I said in that video, I love horror movies. I'm a big fan of horror movies. You know, I like a good jump scare. I like a movie that puts me on the edge, you know, just a movie that makes me feel unease, you know, a movie that's a little bit scary, maybe give me some nightmares. I don't know why I'm weird like that, but I love horror movies. And as you can see, even the shirt that I'm wearing right now says the scariest movie of all time is The Exorcist. Now, I personally don't agree with that view. I think the scariest movie that I've seen and the most enjoyable horror movie that I've seen is probably Insidious. Now, that's a personal preference and everybody has different opinions and takes, but personally for me, Insidious is probably one of the best horror movies that I've ever seen. So, in saying that, I remember when this movie came out and there was such a big hype about it. And I remember at the time just thinking, oh, I should go watch this movie. But for some reason, I never did. And I think a major part of the reason why I avoided this movie is because I just didn't think that I could suspend my disbelief enough for the setting of this movie to work. And I'm going to explain what I mean by that in a bit. So when you watch any movie, one of the things that the director or the producers or the people who make the movie are hoping that you do is that you are able to suspend your disbelief enough for the story that they are trying to tell you, the world that they are trying to build, for that to work. So I'm going to give you an example. In the Terminator movie, one of my favorite movies of all time, as we all know, John Connor is the leader of the resistance. And in the future, he helps the humans survive a post-apocalyptic situation where human beings would have been all but extinct, wiped out. But because of John Connor, human beings were able to survive, they were able to form a resistance, and they were able to win the war, as it is in the movie. So what do the Terminators do in the movie? They sent back a Terminator into the past to kill John Connor before he became the leader of the resistance. Now, there's a huge gaping hole that could have been brought up in this, because they sent back the Terminator to a point when John Connor's mother, Sarah Connor, was about to get pregnant with John. So they sent the Terminator back to a point just before Sarah Connor, John's mother, got pregnant with him. And the idea was for the Terminator to assassinate her before she gives birth to John. So you could ask, how come they couldn't send the Terminator back even further to John's great-grandparents or great-great-grandparents and do it that way? But there is a line of dialogue in the movie that explains why they couldn't do this. And it was, you know, after the whole Kyle Reese, come with me if you want to live scene, where he's explaining to Sarah that the reason why, and we see this in the movie, the Terminator didn't even know exactly who Sarah Connor is. He had to look through the phone books to find all the Sarah Connors, and he starts going through the list one by one. And the explanation for this in the movie is that most of the records before the war had been destroyed. So the Terminators didn't know exactly who John's mother was. They didn't have a picture, you know, they don't know her address, they don't know anything about that. So the only thing that they knew was that her name was Sarah Connor. So they sent the Terminator back to when John would have, just before he would have been born, because they probably know how old John is. So, it doesn't take a lot of deduction to say, okay, John's 37 years, let's send the Terminator back 38 years to when just before he was born. So that little explanation that we got in the movie explains away a lot of the plot holes that would have been brought up and a lot of the questions that would have been brought up, because obviously if they didn't even have the records of John's mother, then it can be implied or assumed that they also didn't have information about his grandparents. So they could only send back the Terminator to the earliest point where they even had any information of who John's lineage is. So without that key part of the movie, if that had been omitted from the movie, we would have been left with a lot of questions. Like I said, how come they couldn't send the Terminator back even further back in time and just eliminate John's bloodline completely? Anyway, what does this have to do with A Quiet Place? So, one of the big things that I said at the time when the movie came out was, based on the premise of the movie, based on how the aliens or the enemy in this movie based on how the enemy in this movie operates, this movie is literally unsurvivable. And here's why. So, one of the things about us human beings as a So, one of the things about us human beings in general is that our existence is very loud. We are very loud creatures unintentionally. There's a lot of things that our bodies do that we sometimes cannot control, and there's a lot of things that can happen that can cause us to make a lot of noise. And the whole premise of this movie is that these aliens are hypersensitive to sound. They have really, 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 really extremely sensitive hearing, and they can hear, I guess, the smallest sounds from who knows how far away. Now, I'm making this video without having seen A Quiet Place Part 2 or A Quiet Place Day 1. So my opinions and my views are solely based on the first movie, the facts that were presented to us in the movie, and the events that we see take place in the movie. So yes, initially when the movie came out, I refused to watch it because I was just thinking there is no way that I could suspend my disbelief enough to believe that human beings are even able to survive in this kind of situation, because like I said, it's just insurvivable. Like, now, before I continue, I'm going to give you an example. Number one, have you ever just been drinking water and the water goes down the wrong pipe? Have you ever been eating food and you accidentally breathe in while you're eating, and a little bit of pee just goes down the wrong pipe and you start coughing violently? Congratulations, you're dead.
Congratulations, you're dead.
Have you ever just been walking and you just needed to sneeze? Just out of the blue, with no explanation, you just needed to sneeze. Congratulations, you're dead.
Congratulations, you're dead.
Have you ever had to yawn? Just because you're just tired, for no reason. Maybe you haven't been breathing properly, something, and then you just needed to yawn, and it's like a really big, loud, uncontrollable yawn. Congratulations, you're dead.
Congratulations, you're dead.
There's a lot of things that we human beings do that is very loud, that we don't always control. From sneezing to coughing, maybe you snore in your sleep. Congratulations, you're dead. So here's my problem with the movie, and this is why I refuse to watch it. But before I go there, I'm just going to say this off the bat. After watching this movie is a great movie. This movie is a great movie. This movie is fantastically well shot, well written, well acted. The cinematography is great. The camera work, the dialogue, however little there was great. The chemistry between the family, the acting was very good. Like, this movie, I can see why there was such a big hype for this movie. This is a great movie. So this isn't a review on is the movie good or bad, because no, it's a very, very, very good movie. So I have no issues with that. My only beef is on the topic of suspension of disbelief as it goes with this movie, because like I said, I think in the movie, by the end of the movie, we were on day 400 and something, almost on day 500, and I'm just going to say this straight up: we wouldn't even survive that long. Now, there are a few things that this movie does to make, the survivability of these characters a little bit more believable. And I don't want to nitpick the same nitpick that I've seen everybody do over and over again, or this, that. I'm going to try and judge this movie based on the facts and evidence that this movie has presented. So, from the first movie, we don't know exactly how many of these aliens have landed on the planet. We don't. So, it is a big problem that these aliens have managed to land on the planet, because that means that they've already infiltrated us. So, what's the problem? Well, due to just how these aliens function biologically, the majority of people are dead from the get-go. The second they manage to land on the ground, I'd say over 70-80% of people are dead, because there is just no way. Number one, initially when the aliens would have landed on the planet, you don't even know how they operate. You don't know how they target people. So almost everybody would have been making noise, panicking, screaming. There would have been a lot of confusion, a lot of commotion. And in fairness to the movie, this is evident in the movie, because we barely see any other people in the movie. So even the movie has clearly shown us that the majority of people are probably dead. The majority of animals are dead, and this is without even knowing how many of these aliens landed. And that's number one. So off the bat, majority of people are dead, because there is just no way for you to know that you need to be quiet in this situation. It would have taken us a long time to figure out that, sound is what attracts these creatures. And at that point, it's probably too late. That's point number one. Point number two, it is almost impossible to plan any sort of attack, any sort of defensive action, any sort of retaliation without dying. Again, for you to make a plan, for you to coordinate some form of attack, you need to talk to people. You need to come up with ideas. You need to know your enemy, know their weaknesses, know their strengths. And doing that takes a lot of time, a lot of resources, and will probably make a lot of noise. Again, you're dead. There's just no way for you to plan any sort of coordinated attack against these things. The second that they manage to land on the planet, it's game over. The human race is done for. So again, that's why we don't see any sort of military, we don't see any sort of human force trying to combat the alien. Our nukes are basically useless in this situation, because these aliens are among us. They're not like off in the middle of nowhere where you could target them with a nuke strike. Any sort of attack involving any sort of nuclear, chemical weaponry will do just as much damage to us as it's going to do to the aliens. So that's completely out of the question. Next point. So due to the breakdown in basically everything that we would call a society, now whoever's left, now because you have to remember this, in society we have a lot of people who are dependent on the system, who are dependent on their commodities. You have a lot of elderly people, you have a lot of disabled, mentally challenged, mentally unwell people, a lot of people with special needs. Healthcare gone. Any sort of industry in terms of health, food, import, export, all that is gone. So pretty much all old people are dead. Anyone who requires a carer dead. All children are dead. even children with parents. I'm sorry, but it's kids. Number one, they're going to get hungry, they're going to cry. I have a child myself. I'm dead. There is just simply no way anyone with a kid is going to survive this situation. You need to provide for these kids. You need to make sure they don't make noise. You need to be able to communicate this with these kids. And if you're lucky enough that you can sign language, fair play to you. But if you even manage to survive that, but then how are you even going to learn sign language? You can't. You're dead. So, like, even just from this few scenarios that I've explained, you can see just how quickly the majority of the world would have been eliminated. Now, I want to focus on the family that we are following. What makes them able to last as long as they did? And is it realistic that they made it to over 400 days? And my answer to that is no, especially not with what we've seen on screen. Number one, their daughter is retarded. I'm sorry to say it. I'm sorry to put it that way. With a retarded daughter like that, your family just wouldn't survive as long as it did. Let's say for a second that they have managed to survive this long. They've managed to survive this long. You know the situation. You know that you can't make any noise. You know you need to be quiet. Even in the pharmacy where they went to get the medicine, there was at least maybe 5, 6, 7 times when they could have made too much noise and they would have all died in that pharmacy, but they managed to make it out. That toy, the toy that the child wanted, the toy that the child was playing with, I think he almost dropped it. Something happened. I can't remember exactly what happened. And the father takes the toy away, says, no, you can't have this. Takes out the battery so the toy doesn't make any noise, puts it back. And then the daughter just came and takes the toy and gives it to the child. Why would you do this? And as you can see, this is even before me addressing the elephant in the room. And when I say the elephant in the room, everybody knows what I mean by the elephant in the room. Because another thing that we fail to consider is there is simply no way for the human population to physically regrow its population. There is physically no way for us to reproduce. You cannot rear a baby to adulthood in these conditions, because we haven't even talked about food and supplies yet. Never mind the fact that babies are just naturally loud. Like that's what babies do. They cry, they laugh, they giggle, they cry. And one thing, and I'm sorry, I know my points might be a little bit all over the place, but when I watched this movie, I really thought that it's going to alleviate all my fears of why we couldn't survive this post-apocalyptic nightmare world that the director came up with, but it just made me more sure that we definitely would not survive this. We would not make it to day 400. The whole human race would be wiped out. Number one, you have to remember, you can't learn any new skills because the internet gone, electricity gone, just breakdown of infrastructure on a global scale, because there's people who are highly skilled, who are highly trained, who maintain a lot of the infrastructure that we take for granted every day. All of that is gone. So without the reliance on infrastructure, I mean, you can't even hunt. I know in the movie they go to the river to fish, which is nice if you live close to a river that has fish, and that's nice, but who even knows how a catastrophic event on such a global scale would affect other forms of wildlife? But I digress. I'm not going to dwell too much into that. But you can't go to the shop to get your food, because by day 20, almost every food in the supermarket would have expired. Now, you do have the benefit that the majority of everybody is dead. So there's a lot more for you to loot if you manage to make it that long. So let's just say you are one of the few peoples that managed to make it to day 20, day 30. As I was saying, whatever skill that you've learned up to this point is the skill you're going to die with. Because, as you all know, most of us, when we don't know something, when we need some information, you can go on the internet, you can Google it, you can talk to someone that's an expert that can help you out. All of that is gone. Any minute single medical emergency that you have, there's no one to help you. There's no doctors, there's no nurses, there's nothing. Again, based on the first movie, because I don't know if in the second movie the world is expanded upon and there's actually pockets of civilization, which I have a feeling that's what's going to happen. They're going to find pockets of civilization, and based on movie magic, everyone's just going to have that one specific skill or attribute that they need to survive. This person's going to be a good medic, a good mechanic, or a good cook, or a good this and that. That's a movie. But in real life, most of us are usually not well skilled or well diverse. Now, in the movie, we can see that the father does have a lot of different skills. And it is very, very, very helpful and convenient in this situation that the father does have all these different skills. He's tinkering with the hearing aid for the daughter who's deaf, trying to contact somebody on the radio. So it looks like he has some a little bit of engineering background, but he's also able to fish, able to hunt, able to do some electrical wiring. And, he just has all these skills that are perfect and for being able to survive in such a world. But even then, any little tiny mistake that you make, like the kid in the beginning of the movie who decided to start playing. Number one, what kind of parents just let a child walk far behind? I don't know. That doesn't make any sense to me. But you let your child walk behind and there's nobody paying attention to him, nobody keeping an eye on him. Even if the alien hadn't caught him, there was not one point where any of the parents looked behind just to make sure that, is this child still following us? You know what children are like. They get distracted very easily. What if he had run off? What if he had caught a glimpse of something? What if, again, I don't want to go into too much what ifs because that's not what the purpose of this review is for. It just pisses me off that you have, but that's what I'm trying to say. You have parents who are this incapable of even looking after a child that's a few years old, and yet you expect me to believe that they were able to survive over 300 days. What are they doing for food? No, again, I know they go fishing. I see them go fishing, and there's that barn with, I don't know if it was flour or maize, but that makes zero sense because not only, like, how do you grow crops? Did they own the barn? Was that theirs? Did they stumble upon it? Because if it was theirs, then you would assume that, again, this is one of those very, very rare circumstances where you just happen to have this. But how far are you from civilization? You have to walk how many miles into town just to get medication? You have to walk how many miles into town just to get medication? How do you even cook your food? Like, cooking is not exactly the most quiet thing ever. Washing dishes is not exactly the most quiet thing ever. Like, they knocked over a lamp in the house when they were playing the board game, and everybody started panicking because they thought one of the aliens was going to be there. If that little bit of noise can attract the alien, then what happens when you're washing dishes or you're making food, you drop something? Like, you would have to be almost perfect in everything you do to even survive in this world. And to top it all off, they decided to have a baby. Number one, even, like, I don't even know what the plan was in how they were going to raise this baby. Because even if you were to somehow find a way to soundproof everything, this is still a child. Children want to explore. They want to, go everywhere, do everything. There is no way that you are going to keep this tiny human being from never once making any noise in the wrong place. What happens if you get sick? You need to go out. The baby gets sick. You need to get medicine. Like, there's just so many scenarios where at any point it's the end of your life. Number one, okay, I'm just going to say this off like straight away. The second you know what you're dealing with, you should be going through the back door. Anything you do, you should be going through the back door. You should not be, there should be no consideration, there should be no reason for you to be going through the front door. Never mind risking getting pregnant and giving birth. Everything you do should be through the back door. No front door entrance. But yet, they decided to get pregnant and have a baby. Do you know how many things could even go wrong with a pregnancy? Again, there is no emergency help. Are we supposed to believe that this man is also a doctor? So he's an engineer, he's a farmer, he's a hunter, he's a doctor. This is the perfect movie man. This man is the perfect movie man because I know from first-hand experience just how painful, just how painful and how loud pregnancies can be. And never mind if there was any sort of complication with the baby that could potentially be a harm or a threat to the mother, there's nobody to help you out. What if you need an emergency C-section? But no, never mind. She was able to give birth all by herself in the bathtub while there's an alien walking up the stairs slowly, and no problem, no issues at all. So yeah, this is my biggest issues and my biggest gripe with the premise of this movie. Because again, after watching the movie, there are a lot of things that I'm like, yeah, this, I can see, yeah, if you do this, if you do that. But ultimately, I just couldn't suspend my disbelief enough to really believe that the events that I'm seeing in the movie could actually happen as they would have in the movie, because realistically, everyone would have been dead. And as you can see, I didn't even bring up the fact that conveniently, the daughter's earpiece that she wears, the hearing aid, conveniently is a weakness for this alien, because there was many times in the movie where she would have died, but because of the hearing aid interfering with the alien's senses, she survives. I'm not even going to nitpick on that, because I think in the premise of the movie, in the scope of the movie, it's explained well. It makes sense in universe why that happens. Like, if that's what happens, that's what happens. I'm not going to say, oh, that's convenient, because this is the story that we're watching. There's probably many people who had a similar situation who didn't have that and they died. But just my problem again with it is that the movie would have never got up to this point. I'm sorry, but the movie just would never have got up to this point. And maybe one of the reasons why the movie did is because they didn't tell us exactly how many aliens landed and attacked. But it's just funny that at the end of the movie, when the shotgun was let off, you see a bunch of these aliens running to attack. So clearly, there was enough of them around to cause total extinction, but they just decided to attack one by one up until the end of the movie. And we get a badass scene at the end of the movie of the mother cocking the shotgun, ready to take on how many aliens with how many bullets. Also, at the end when the father dies, and he had to make the really loud noise just to save his children, because they were trapped in the car and the monster was trying to get them. Are you telling me it's been day 400 and you do not have anything else that you could use to distract the aliens? You didn't plan, you didn't anticipate that a situation like this could possibly happen again? Like, I'm supposed to believe that these are the people who have survived up to this long, and they didn't take any precautions. They had the one with the fireworks, which was a great idea, but why don't you have more of that? Why don't you have other ways of making noise? Because these aliens can't see, they're simply attracted to noise, and you only had one one thing set up, one way of distracting the aliens. If your life depended on it, you were willing to just die. You don't know what's going to happen. I think he was just tired. I think that father was just tired, because you're telling me that you are willing to just leave your family knowing full well the wife just had another baby, and these two little mischievous fuckers that she has to deal with, and you're like, yeah, you know what, this is a perfectly good time to sacrifice my life because we didn't plan any other way, in case this exact scenario happened, which we know could happen because this is the world that we've survived in for over 200, 300 days. My wife just had a baby, but yeah, I'm just going to sacrifice myself, not knowing if they're going to live or die. I think the father he just had enough. He was like, fuck, man, I'm not raising another baby, man. It's already been hard enough raising the last three. We lost one, and now you want me to raise another baby? He was just done. And you know what? I don't blame him. Because we're not even talking about just how good this baby is. Like, best baby ever. Best fucking baby. And I know some people are going to be in my comments be like, oh, when I had my baby, it didn't cry. No, shut up. It's a baby. They might not cry, and then they might start crying. You don't know. They can't tell you when they're hungry. They can't tell you anything. They just make noise. That's what they do. But this baby, all of a sudden, was the best behaved baby you've ever fucking, like, she is face to face with the alien, and this baby like, oh, this sleep good. So like, what? 10 out of 10, and ain't no way in hell we are surviving. There's no way you could even fight back. There's no way you could even fight back, because anything we use to fight back is going to make noise, which is going to attract the aliens. And that's without even including all the ways that we human beings, again, like I said, you sneeze, you snore, you cough, you burp, you fart. There's just so many ways that we human beings we're just so loud. You can't get any medical anything. If you have cancer, if you have any sort of medical any issue ailing you, which is like the majority of the human race, you're dead. If you snore, you're dead. Like, if you have a baby, if you have a kid, you're dead.
Congratulations, you're dead.
So how am I supposed to believe this world that you've set up for me? And that doesn't stop the movie from being good, because I actually enjoyed the movie. I like the premise of the movie. But just like I explained with Terminator earlier, and we're going to come back full circle now, we could have had this same issue with Terminator if that line of dialogue hadn't been there to explain to us how the historical records had mostly been lost, and the Terminators didn't have any information other than the fact that John's mother was called Sarah Jane. A lot of this could have happened to the Terminator movie, and it might not have been the beloved movie franchise that we loved, at least for the first 2 or 3 movies, depending on who you are. Maybe in this movie they could have put some sort of limitation on the aliens. Maybe they could have put some sort of restraint on them. Maybe there's only a handful of them. But no, in the end, we see a bunch of them. Maybe they only hear sounds up to a certain decibel or frequency. So maybe if you're walking, if you drop something in the house, you're safe. But if you're outside and you drop something, you're dead. There could have been ways where this movie could have, I think, in terms of suspension of disbelief and in terms of making sense and being believable as an event that you could possibly and potentially have survivors. There could have been some things in the line of dialogue, but there was very little dialogue, so you couldn't even expose it. You couldn't even do that. So everything in the movie has led me to believe that any sound you make, they can't even whisper. Like, why do they need to sign language? What, do the aliens also hear you if you whisper really quietly? I mean, you could have been talking inside the house to your kids like this. Why couldn't they do that? Zero explanation for it. So if you can't even whisper, but you're telling me nobody in this family snores, nobody in this family has a bad dream, they're just completely quiet every time, all the time, which is just absolutely unnatural. How did you even teach that little kid how to sign language? Because to be able, you know what, I'm going to fix this myself. There were simple line of dialogue or a simple scene where they go down by the river and that's where they learn how to sign language. Boom. Because it doesn't make sense how this kid knows how to sign language, because you need to be able to, people are not born just knowing what things are in sign language. A lot of people who learn sign language, they usually learn sign language because they also have a reference of the thing that they're trying to, so if you want to learn the sign for elephant, you see a picture of an elephant and okay, this is an elephant. But there's so many things that you can't do again now because of this world you live in. So there's so many words that you can't possibly explain to this kid. But maybe if you're learning sign language as somebody that can hear, you're not deaf, maybe then you could say, oh, this is an elephant, this sign is elephant. Now at least he knows that whatever sign language for elephant, he knows what that is. So now he can sign it back to you. But for that to be possible, you need to learn it. There was no indication of how any of this was learned. How did they get all that wheat or maize into the barn? How do you even continue to grow crops? Because farming is not quiet. You can't do farming in silence. To plant the seeds, to your fertilizer and all the different things you need to do. Farming is not a silent thing. How do you do that in silent? They cook in silent. They pee in silent. They shower in silent. They eat in silent. And you're telling me with all these different things that we do where there's a potential for noise, not once does anybody accidentally make any noise that could get them killed. When at the start of the movie, there was at least 20 ways they could have died just in the one scene between when they went to the pharmacy to get the medication and the time they went home. Just in that couple of minutes of the movie, there was at least 100 ways they could have died, and in fact their child did die, but yet I'm supposed to believe that they survived over 400 days being able to get every supply they need. No one caught the flu. No one had a headache. No one had back pains. No one fell. No one dropped something. Come on. So yeah, this is my thoughts on A Quiet Place Part 1. Would I recommend you watch this movie? Yes. Is it a good movie? Yes. Would any of the events in the movie have taken place if this happened in real life? No. We would all be dead and there'll be nothing we can do about it. If you like the video, please like and subscribe. Thank you very much for watching, and peace.